moving through the deconditioning and alignment process. Now, I'm going to give you a heads up that this is a big one. There's a lot within this, which I hope will help you as you align, whether you're completely new to this or very well versed and have been experimenting for years. And I hope there's something for you to take away for all of you, okay? So let's begin. Now, there comes a time in most people's lives where you are facing a crossroad decision about who you are and where you want to go. This happens because we tend to live on autopilot until it becomes too much. That autopilot is filled with the default options and the routes to take in life. They are programmed into our subconscious from birth. Everything around you, including where you were born, how many siblings you had, what your parents or caregivers believed in, based on their life experiences, the news stories that came out at that time, the school that you were told to go to, the vacations you did or didn't go on, the way in which people treated you, the things that you observed around you, the television programs you watched, the social media you consumed, the food that you ate, the food that your family and friends eat, the groups of people and the friends that you make, the beliefs of those people and whether or not they exercise and their views on exercise and so on. And these are just the things that you had while you were growing up. Then you had the ones from your adult life, what job you got into, your colleagues' belief, how your boss treats you, your living conditions, the political conditions, what people tell you about money, and so on again. We are programmed in our mind. We are programmed through other people's frequencies. We are programmed through our learned responses, which affect our nervous system. And even on a science level, we are picking up physical cues and information in sweat and microparticles, which are communicating with each other. So no matter which modality or system you choose, whether science or spiritual, you will see that we are more than just us. We are influenced and affected by so many things on micro levels. And this is all our nurture. Then we have our nature. We have our genes, our predispositions, our height, our eye color, our skin color, any illnesses, disabilities. There's a lot that makes us who we are and how people treat us. But there becomes a point in most people's lives when the defaults and the subconscious actions and reactions become so uncomfortable that you are forced to look inwards and make new decisions. You are forced to build your own path because the one you've been walking doesn't fit. The choice is, do I carry on with what I'm doing or do I change my path? And the thing with this choice is, it becomes harder to continue with the path you were on because you're now aware that it doesn't fit. Before this moment of awareness, you could carry on. So when you are aware, the question actually becomes an illusion. The question isn't, do I stay or do I go? Do I change something? It's when. When do I change things? Now, let me reiterate here, it doesn't mean you have to burn things down without giving people around you the chance to catch up with the inner change that's happening within you. It doesn't mean that your marriage has to end. It doesn't mean that you have to quit your job or you have to move countries. But it does mean your inner landscape needs to change to accommodate your new awareness. It does mean that you are about to discover new parts of who you are, and you don't know who that person is you are about to find out about. You don't know what you will need or what will await you in 2 months into the journey or 6 months into the journey or a year into the journey. You definitely do not know how people around you will respond to these changes. I'm sure your mind has predicted it. However, this prediction is not fact. This is chaos theory. We cannot by any means predict for certainty what someone else will do when we change. And it can also become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think, my partner will not love me if I do X, Y, Z, you are going to be looking for cues to say that your partner does not love you when you do X, Y, Z. Your mind looks out for confirmation. Your mind wants you to feel safe, that it can predict what's happening next. So it will look for anything to confirm that it was or is correct. It's also on the lookout to keep you safe. It is wired to spot threats. This is an evolutionary feature of our mind. And while we have at our core key threats, most of our mind threats are learnt and not actually threats at all. They are triggers, which are the opposite of glimmers, which are our signs that we are safe. This is partly why working with the mind during these awakenings is so important, because the mind holds so much of the discomfort. Once we can expand what the mind is capable of seeing, once we can say to the mind, this belief is not helping you, everything changes. Once a difficult situation is no longer difficult, once a triggering situation is no longer triggering, and once an irritating situation is no longer irritating, and so on. The world doesn't need to change for you to feel at peace with who you are. Your mind needs to. It's about the tools and techniques you can gather. It's about the perspective shifts you allow yourself. So you get to this point where you are aware of your uncomfortability with your own life, where you are aware of the uncomfortability in your own body. And this is when you look at your past decisions and wonder, why? You look at your current life and wonder, how did I get here? Was I asleep? Now, in human design, we have 4 signposts, one for each energy type. They are our signposts to say something is wrong, especially if you spend all or most of your time in this theme. If you are a generator, your signpost is the feeling of frustration. Are you mostly or always in the feeling of frustration? Are you frustrated and tired and bored and uninspired? Do the people around you frustrate you? Does your job frustrate you? If you're a manifesting generator, you also have the keynote of anger, which I'll explain with the manifestor part. Now, if you're a projector, your signpost is the feeling of bitterness. Are you mostly or always in the feeling of bitterness? Are you irritated and bitter that the people around you don't understand you? Are you exhausted by life? Are you burnt out? Are you trying to keep up with everyone else around you? Do you feel unrecognized by your partner, family, friends? If you're a manifester, your signpost is the feeling of anger. Are you mostly or always in the feeling of anger? Do you feel angry that the people are getting in your way? Do you feel exhausted because you're trying to do too much? And if you're a reflector, your signpost is the feeling of disappointment. Are you mostly or always in the feeling of disappointment? Does life feel predictable to you? Do people feel predictable to you? Do things feel samey? So if you're currently trying to work out if you need to change your life or if you need to make a change in your life, if you're trying to work out if you're not in alignment with your true path, these are the feelings I want you to feel into. They are your signposts to say that you are off track. And the world right now is full of people who are frustrated, angry, disappointed, and bitter. This is the nature of the world when people operate in a default way, when people are operating out of autopilot. You may have been told by the people around you, well, that's life. You're going to be disappointed. You're not going to like your job. You're going to be frustrated. Feel into those narratives right now. What are those narratives that are telling you that that's okay? What are the narratives that are telling you and keeping you in those feelings? It's okay to be frustrated. What are the narratives that make you feel that this is normal and there's not anything better out there? That there's not a better way, there's not a different way of doing things. I know that these narratives do not match with how you are feeling. Because when you go through a life-changing situation and you become aware of your discomfort and aware of yourself, even though it can feel hopeless in many, many moments while you move through your growth, you have an inner knowing that there is something else out there. There is a little ember of light in there and it's seeking something. It's a little bit hopeful. So let's fan that light. Now, with regards to path and purpose, everyone does have a path which is best suited to them. In human design, we can look at your incarnation cross, your profile, your gates, your channels, your centers. And you can also see it through your trajectory and nodes. We can identify what your purpose is and then align you with that through strategy and authority. From a spiritual perspective, it's not as simple as one path. It's actually a resonance which could be several things along that same frequency. You will enter into experiences which resonate with where you are at in any given time of your journey. There is no right or wrong. That is the journey. It's about picking a path that resonates and moves you into alignment through the lessons that you learn. It's about participation. And I want to talk about aligned paths and comfort levels. I have 4 categories that I've learned through my own life experience and from watching others and speaking to clients. We have those paths which are unaligned and uncomfortable. That's my first category, unaligned and uncomfortable. This is where change happens. You will feel uncomfortable being there. You can feel the resonance is off. This is often rock bottom. This is the change point. You've come off path and there isn't anything in there which is creating a false sense of comfort. You are unaligned and uncomfortable. The second category is something which is unaligned but feels comfortable. There's this false sense of, well, perhaps this is for me. It's like being in the wrong relationship with the nicest person ever. It can feel super, super comfortable and happy. Everything can be completely fine, yet you feel the alignment isn't there. You aren't being you. To be in that situation, you are molding, you're keeping yourself contained. This can be the same for a job or a friendship or a living arrangement. It's just an analogy. But you're unaligned but comfortable. This is where change doesn't really occur because you are fine where you are until you become uncomfortable and move into that first category. And that's where you decide to make a change. Next comes the aligned categories. For me, the third category is aligned and uncomfortable. This is where many people go backwards into unaligned and comfortable, the second category I was talking about. And they go back there because they feel they've made this move and it's wrong, that the grass wasn't greener, it's uncomfortable. And I want you to know not every aligned situation is going to feel comfortable. Alignment isn't comfortable. Even when you are aligned, not every experience is going to be comfortable. Alignment doesn't lead you to sunshine and rainbows, but it doesn't mean it's wrong or unaligned. The difference with this category is that there is a different undertone. Although you are uncomfortable, there is an undertone of, but this is right. And it's not a narrative. It's not a story. It's not words. It's an energy. It's an energy which has no words. It can't be explained. It's a little bit like building a purpose-led company which you feel so aligned to, but it's hard. The journey is challenging. It's like entering into a relationship with someone who is healthy for you, but you are triggered all through the early stages because of your past. The uncomfortability is our work. This is where we do our inner work. This is where we set boundaries. This is where we learn. Finally, there's aligned and comfortable. And this is what everyone is aiming for. However, I want to note that this is not a sustained place. It's also no better than the third category of being aligned and uncomfortable. I want you to know that it's not linear. This is not a linear process or a stepping stone process. Even the most aligned person will get themselves into situations sometimes which are unaligned and uncomfortable. The difference is, once you start to do the inner work, it's very, very hard to sustain those unaligned categories for very long. You bounce back into alignment much quicker because you are used to the frequency of them. You become a connoisseur of aligned energy and you can spot it much quicker. But the fourth category for me, as I say, is aligned and comfortable. It's pretty blissful, but we don't learn here and it's not sustained. Okay. Now I want to talk about the alignment process and what that actually means. Now, the first step of the alignment process is this awakening moment. And I know that might sound a little cliche. However, until you are aware of your own uncomfortability, until you are uncomfortable enough, there is nothing that can externally decide for you to awaken or align. There is no amount of someone telling you that you need to change. This is why awakenings are often rock bottom. They are moments when you are uncomfortable and unaligned. This is when you try to make do, to make the best of things, to keep going, to not let people down, to put others first, to put yourself last, burn yourself out, keep chasing goals, try to build the aesthetically pleasing life, try to please your parents, etc. Awakenings can happen at any moment. Often they are triggered by something on top of your normal life. This is why many people go through awakenings after a life-changing injury or a huge breakup or after the death of a loved one. Some of you will need more than one of these at the same time to throw you off balance. Many of you will be okay with the odd thing going wrong, but if they all happen at once, that's when you listen. And that's how the universe does it. I know for myself, and this wasn't at the beginning of my alignment journey, but it was definitely part of it, I had multiple things come up at the same time. I had a health scare, mum had a health scare, I had a messy breakup with someone I was living with overseas, my nan was on end-of-life care at home and eventually passed away, my parents split up, and I moved house and I moved country, all at the same time, in the space of a few months. This is what it took to knock me off balance at this stage in my journey. It wasn't going to be one of those, it had to be all of them. I would have been fine otherwise. And this actually signified the start of my Saturn return. And Saturn return is what happens around 28, 29, and it repeats again around 60. And it aims to get you back on track with what you are here to do. So you've had an awakening moment. In that moment, you can feel isolated and alone. You can feel no one understands you. You cannot know what you need or what to do next, and this is uncomfortable. This is also your discovery moment. This is where you start searching for something. You're not sure what it is, but you're searching. You're having new conversations. You're speaking to different people in new ways. You're looking at sessions to book with therapists or practitioners in different modalities. You're looking for like-minded people. You're learning to put yourself in new situations which you're not comfortable in because you're already so uncomfortable in your current situation. How could it get worse? You are learning to feel comfortable in the uncomfortable, and your world is slowly starting to expand, even if it doesn't feel like it. It might not feel like it because it can happen in very tiny, tiny steps. One day, you realize by looking backwards as to how far you have come. During this part of aligning, the majority of it will happen in new spaces, spaces you haven't been to before. It will happen with people you've never spoken to before. It tends not to happen with people in your family or your close friends. And this is where some people can go not wrong, but a little bit off track. Why? Because your current situation is what is not aligned, and your current situation is formed off of your past decisions, and your past cannot get you to your future. You may find yourself trying to bring the current people around you, for example, your partner, friends, family, etc. You might be trying to get them along for the ride with you, but it's not the ride. Your current people and situation cannot create your future. This doesn't mean you have to get rid of them from your life, but it does mean that you have to look outside of what you currently have in order for you to grow and change, which is what the awakening moment is calling for. It's what your awareness and your inner knowing is calling for. So you're going to feel alone for a little while, but there are like-minded people out there. And when you allow yourself to be more you, you will find those people automatically because we attract what is similar to us. So my advice with this is to help yourself to align by aligning outside of what is familiar to you. Integration of the two worlds is what happens when you become more secure in who your new self is, and that takes time. The previous people can keep you repeating the same situation or lead you away from change. They love you, and they only know you as the person you are now. But this is where you need to love you more, and you need to step outside into new situations for a little while. Now, alignment requires an intuitive knowing of energy. It requires you to know yourself. But this also means we have to know what isn't us. We have to unlearn things. We have to be able to work out what our mind is saying, what our mind is talking to us about, and what our intuition is talking to us about. And at the beginning of an alignment process, it usually starts off as a logical process. The mind has to be on board with what's happening. It finds it very hard to surrender otherwise. So a lot of the work is to equip your mind with new tools so that you can surrender and allow the new to come in. In human design, we call this deconditioning, the deconditioning process. We bring awareness to the current narratives and conditioning of the mind. We help you become aware of why and how your mind is talking to you. We can show you which narratives are serving you and which ones aren't. Deconditioning is drawing the mind awareness to the things which are not you, so you can unlearn the things that you have been told to make way for your unique true essence to come out. In a chart session, we pinpoint these for you. We also do this in the Living Your Design workshop, which is coming to Odyssey soon. If you want to look at yourself in your own chart, the clues are in your white, undefined centers. Each of those white, undefined centers holds the thematics, and that is what we explore in the workshop and in chart sessions. It's unique to you. Once you are aware of your mind chatter and how it's speaking to you and why, you can start recognizing it on a day-to-day basis. You can start to stop letting it have an impact on your decisions, and you can start to experiment with new conscious decision-making through strategy and authority. Now, interestingly, I have found a process to the deconditioning process. When you become aware of how your mind works, once you become aware of your patterns, you're not going to automatically make new decisions. It's not a process of just saying, this is why. Some people try to move through this phase way too quickly. When you become aware of your patterns and the narrative of your mind, the first step is to start noticing things by looking backwards. As you move through life and you're making decisions, you want to start noticing retrospectively that the decision you made was because of the unconscious pattern you had in your mind. Some of us push ourselves to notice in the moment and we kick ourselves, but the first step is to notice it looking back. The next step is to start noticing it in less and less time. But this can't be forced. You cannot force yourself to be aware of something. However, you can keep exercising that muscle. Keep spotting the patterns playing out. Consciously pull it into your awareness. Keep reflecting back every couple of days or so and identify where your repeating pattern or repeating narrative was playing out. What you'll find is that lag between identifying and deciding or acting will decrease over time. Eventually, you will find there will be minutes in between you deciding or acting a certain way and you spotting the pattern play out. It then becomes real time. You can spot yourself doing something which is not serving you in the moment and you nip it in the bud. You're able to self-regulate. You're able to keep your mind in check in real time. This then means you can start in the next step, preempting things playing out. But the first step is watching it retrospectively to bring yourself more and more into the present moment. When you then master that, and then you start preempting a pattern playing out, this is where we have even more control over our mind. When we know we're going somewhere which will trigger a behavior, we can put tools in place so it doesn't happen. Eventually, it no longer is a trigger, and you are on autopilot making new decisions which are much more in alignment with you. This is the process. This is why the process needs to happen in new places with new people, because your current situation has so many micro triggers which you have unconsciously attached to. Once you begin mastering this outside of your current situation, it's then about bringing it back and trying to integrate it into the new version of you with the previous situations of you. This is the challenge. So, for example, once you become well-versed at setting boundaries with strangers and new friends, you will become a lot more comfortable about setting boundaries with family members because it becomes second nature. You don't have to think about it. It's much easier than trying to set and experiment with setting boundaries with family. There's already a situation playing out there. There's already roles that have been played. A lot of this is also to do with feeling safe to be yourself, feeling accepted as yourself, feeling that it's safe to go against the narratives which have kept you alive for this long. Inner trust is key to surrenderment and change, and therefore your alignment. Inner trust, and that's what we're trying to build here. Now, one way I suggest to do this, build this inner trust and pushing yourself a little bit, is to do it through what I call acts of self-rebellion. And these are small acts of self-rebellion, not big ones. These are micro experiments where you try to prove to yourself that it's okay and safe to do something which your mind is telling you not to do. For example, many of us feel under pressure to get things done quickly. And I myself have had this feeling for years. To get things done, move quickly, do more is a pressure. If someone asks you to decide, you feel like you have to decide right then and there. So I started to become suspicious about this narrative after learning about my human design. My human design gave me the specific permission to slow down. And hearing that permission was freeing. However, hearing it wasn't enough. My mind still had so many objections. My mind said things like, but if you don't reply quickly, you're going to lose all your friends, the job opportunity would disappear, all of these things. So one of my acts of self-rebellion was to pause before deciding or replying, to make decisions from a calmer place under less pressure. So one of my acts of self-rebellion was to feel that pressure, but to go for a 15-minute walk before sending a text. Perhaps it was to sleep on it for one evening before accepting or declining an opportunity. These little acts of self-rebellion proved slowly over time that it was safe, that the world wouldn't fall apart if I didn't reply instantly, that I could move slower, that I could reply slower. And the same goes for any other experiment of self-rebellion. testing these narratives, knowing that they aren't serving you. So you start testing them if you just go against them just a little bit, just a tiny, tiny amount, slowly stepping outside of that comfort zone. Okay. I told you there was a lot in this one. We're still going. Now, when you do these acts of self-rebellion, you can slowly start to increase the amount you rebel. And this is how you build your inner trust. You allow yourself to do what feels natural for you in small ways. And now the note here is that it felt right for my body, but it didn't feel right for my mind to slow down. And this is where the work is. It's making the body align, the mind quiet. That's what we're trying to do. It's not about making the mind comfortable. It's about equipping ourselves with the tools. In human design, we speak a lot about getting the body in the right place. The right environment means the right people, means you get the right opportunities. And because we're in this human experience, it's about the human body being in the right places, not for the mind. We're trying to either transcend the mind or put the mind in a separate box. We don't want the toddler mind or the monkey mind making our decisions. Okay, so there has been a lot in this one, and here's what I want you to take away from this. I want you to start noticing your inner narratives, your inner stories. I want you to start noticing how your mind is speaking to you. Write it down if you have to. What is it telling you about you? What's it telling you about keeping yourself small, or why it's okay to be frustrated or bitter or disappointed or angry? Notice those narratives. I want you to become curious about those narratives. Is it really serving you? Is that belief causing you to burn out and to lose yourself? Or is it making you feel truly aligned? Can you rebel against it a little bit? Ideally, you need to become acquainted. You need to get to know your true self, which is your unique self, and your not self, which is who you are not. This is how your mind speaks to you. And this is done in those human design sessions. This is very, very personal than you. So if you're interested, book a session because it's very, very personal. And if you're ready to learn about it, dive in. I also want you to become okay with where you are on your journey right now. It's not a race. It's not about aligning as quickly as you can. Now, I hope that there were some tips in here about how to start giving yourself space to discover who you are, and then how to integrate that back in with the people that you know. I want you to remember that there is an awakening period. There is an awareness and learning period. There is a deconditioning and unlearning period. And there is a realignment period. And none of it is linear. You're going to move through them all at different paces at any given time. I want you to remember that just because something is uncomfortable doesn't mean it's not aligned. But you can feel if something is aligned to you when you look at the past and comfort. It feels different. There's a different resonance to alignment and unalignment. That's what you're feeling into, not the comfort levels. And release the expectations of what it should look like. The last thing is there are ways to align, and in human design, this is what we call strategy and authority. This is what we experiment with. This is how we transcend the mind. This is how we learn to make decisions correctly as ourselves. It's how we put the authority back on you and not giving it away to friends, family, gurus. We pull it back into ourselves, and it's invaluable and it keeps you on track. So I hope this was helpful, and listen to the other videos or book a session with myself to learn and understand more about this information and yourself. And we'll speak to you soon.